There are ancient structures on Earth that modern engineers look at and then very quietly admit they do not know exactly how they were built. Not because the builders were aliens, that explanation is lazy and wrong, but because the precision, the scale, and the specific engineering decisions made by people working thousands of years ago with tools we can document and skills we can partially reconstruct are more advanced than the standard narrative of ancient capability suggests. Here are the 13 ancient structures on Earth that look like they're from the future. Number 13. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. Göbekli Tepe, on a limestone ridge in the Taurus Mountains of southeastern Turkey near the city of Şanlıurfa, was built approximately 11,500 to 9,000 years ago, making it the oldest known megalithic structure on Earth and therefore older than agriculture. The specific implication of this dating, confirmed by multiple independent carbon-14 analyses and stratigraphy, is that the people who built it were hunter-gatherers. Before Göbekli Tepe was excavated by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, beginning in 1994, the standard model of human social development held that monumental architecture required settled agricultural society to support the organized labor, the hierarchy, and the food surplus it required. Göbekli Tepe produced a specific reversal of that model. The T-shaped limestone pillars at Göbekli Tepe, weighing up to 20 tons each, carved with bas-relief images of foxes, boars, herons, vultures, and abstract symbols, and arranged in circular enclosures, required a level of organized labor, quarrying skill, and architectural design that does not fit the behavioral model of small, mobile hunter-gatherer bands. The largest excavated pillars are approximately 5.5 meters tall and 50 tons in weight. Approximately 5 to 10% of the site has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar surveys indicate that the unexcavated portions are at least as extensive as what has been found. The standard archaeological debate around Göbekli Tepe concerns what the site was and who built it. Klaus Schmidt, who directed excavations until his death in 2014, consistently argued that it was a ritual or religious site, a place that people traveled to for ceremonies, rather than a settlement. No domestic structures, no cooking hearths, and no evidence of permanent habitation have been found despite the scale of the construction. The construction itself may have been the reason people gathered rather than a byproduct of other activity. The specific implication for human social evolution is documented and significant. If the site was built for ritual purposes by mobile hunter-gatherers, then the organizational capacity for monument building did not require agriculture. Rather, it may have preceded it. Some researchers have proposed that the organizational and social complexity required to build Göbekli Tepe is what eventually produced agriculture. That feeding the labor force required for construction created the incentive to begin cultivating grain rather than simply gathering it. This reversal of the standard agriculture-first model is controversial and remains debated, but the evidence from Göbekli Tepe is the specific reason the debate exists. The animal imagery on the pillars, the foxes, boars, vultures, cranes, and abstract symbols that populate every carved surface, has been studied by archaeoastronomer Martin Sweatman and others who have proposed specific astronomical associations for the carved figures. These interpretations are contested, but the density and consistency of the carved imagery suggests a symbolic vocabulary that is not yet fully decoded. Number 12. Sacsayhuaman, Cusco, Peru. Sacsayhuaman, the ceremonial and military complex on the hill overlooking Cusco, Peru, was built by the Inca in the 15th century CE, recent by this list's standards, using a construction method called ashlar, in which stones are cut to fit precisely without mortar. The specific quality that produces the future from the past response is the scale and precision of the largest stones in the outer walls. The largest known stone at Sacsayhuaman measures approximately 8.5 meters tall, 5 meters wide, and weighs an estimated 125 tons. The stones are not all rectangular. They are polygonal, with irregular shapes that interlock with their neighbors in multiple directions. The joints between the stones are tight enough that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them at many points. The specific engineering challenge this represents: cutting irregularly shaped stones to fit complex polygonal joints requires either physical templating, cutting each stone against its neighbors, or a level of geometric measurement that produces the same result. Either method, applied to 125-ton blocks at high altitude in the 15th century, is extraordinary. The seismic rationale for the polygonal jointing has been proposed by archaeologists and engineers. The interlocking shapes allow the wall to move and resettle during earthquakes rather than cracking, which is specifically relevant in the seismically active Andes. Cusco has experienced major earthquakes, and the Inca walls at Sacsayhuaman have been documented as surviving earthquakes that destroyed the colonial Spanish buildings built on top of them. Number 11. The Dendera Temple Complex, Egypt. The Dendera Temple Complex in Upper Egypt, dedicated to the goddess Hathor and constructed in its current form primarily during the Ptolemaic period, approximately 300 to 30 BCE, with earlier foundations going back to the Middle Kingdom, contains a specific element that has generated more speculation per square meter than almost any other ancient structure: the Dendera relief, sometimes called the Dendera light. The Dendera light is a bas-relief in the Hathor Temple's crypt that depicts what some have argued resembles a modern electric light bulb, a lotus flower on a serpent, with the figure of a serpent djed column inside what could be interpreted as a glass bulb shape. The electric light interpretation, proposed by engineer Reinhard Habeck and popularized in various alternative archaeology publications, argues that the Egyptians had functional electric lighting. This interpretation is rejected by mainstream Egyptology, which identifies the imagery as standard Egyptian religious iconography of a lotus from which a serpent emerges, representing creation mythology. The lotus, the serpent, and the djed column all have documented religious meanings in the Egyptian symbolic vocabulary. The specific combination does look like a light bulb. It also looks like the religious symbols it is made of. The same crypt at Dendera also contains one of the most beautifully preserved collections of Ptolemaic-era astronomical and religious inscriptions in Egypt. The ceiling of the temple's outer hypostyle hall contains the Dendera zodiac, a circular bas-relief map of the ancient Egyptian sky, now in the Louvre after being removed by the French in 1821, that documents the positions of the constellations and is the oldest extant complete horoscope in the world, dated by astronomical calculation to approximately 50 BCE. Number 10. Pumapunku, Bolivia. Pumapunku, part of the Tiwanaku archaeological complex on the Altiplano of Bolivia, at approximately 3,900 meters above sea level near Lake Titicaca, contains stone blocks that produce the specific reaction this video's title describes. The H-shaped interlocking blocks, cut from andesite and red sandstone, have been machined, in the archaeological interpretation, ground and chipped, to tolerances of fractions of a millimeter and include internal channels, right angles, smooth flat surfaces, and interlocking geometries that, if you did not know they were pre-Columbian, would look like precision-machined components. Tiwanaku culture is dated to approximately 500 to 1000 CE. The blocks at Pumapunku were cut using stone, bone, and bronze tools. No metal harder than bronze is documented in the pre-Columbian Andean toolkit. The precision achievable with these tools is documented in experimental archaeology. Yes, with sufficient time, skilled labor, and abrasive stone techniques, you can achieve very fine tolerances without modern machinery. The specific blocks at Pumapunku have been replicated experimentally. The effort required is extraordinary. The result is exactly what you see at the site. The site was significantly disrupted by the construction of a railroad in the 19th century, which scattered many of the blocks. What remains in situ is a fraction of the original complex. The broader Tiwanaku civilization that created Pumapunku is one of the most significant pre-Columbian South American civilizations and one of the least familiar to North American audiences. At its peak, the Tiwanaku polity controlled a territory encompassing portions of modern Bolivia, Peru, Chile, and Argentina, and its capital city near Lake Titicaca may have housed between 10,000 and 20,000 people. The specific geographic context, high altitude, cold, semi-arid, distant from tropical lowland resources, makes the civilization's scale and material achievement more remarkable rather than less. The standard alternative archaeology claim about Puma Punku is that the precision of the stonework is impossible without modern machine tools. The experimental archaeology response to this claim is specific. Researchers have replicated the basic stone-cutting techniques using period-appropriate tools and have demonstrated that the tolerances achieved at Puma Punku are achievable with ground stone abrasives, metal chisels, and significant time and skill. The specific amount of time required is much greater than modern machining would require, which explains the extended labor investment that Tiwanaku culture made in the construction. But achievable is not the same as impossible. Tiwanaku's collapse, dated to approximately 1000 CE, has been linked in the scientific literature to a prolonged drought documented in ice core and sediment records from the Lake Titicaca Basin. The civilization that built Puma Punku was ended not by military conquest, but by the failure of the agricultural system it had built to survive multi-decade drought. Number 9. Nan Madol, Micronesia. Nan Madol, off the eastern shore of Pohnpei in the Federated States of Micronesia, is a series of approximately 92 artificial islands constructed from basalt columns. The same natural hexagonal basalt formations seen at the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland and at other volcanic sites, stacked in log cabin fashion to form platforms, walls, and buildings in a tidal lagoon. The complex covers approximately 18 square kilometers and is the only ancient city built atop a coral reef. The basalt columns come from quarries on the opposite side of the island and from other islands in the Pohnpei Lagoon. The columns weigh between 5 and 50 tons each. The construction method, floating and rafting the basalt columns across the lagoon, is documented in oral tradition and has been experimentally reconstructed. The city was the ceremonial and political center of the Saudeleur dynasty, which ruled Pohnpei from approximately 1100 to 1628 CE. UNESCO designated Nan Madol a World Heritage Site in 2016. It is accessible only by boat and is in a significant state of deterioration due to the absence of management resources adequate to maintain a site of its scale in a remote Pacific location. Number 8. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu approximately 2560 BCE, is documented enough that it needs no introduction, and yet its specific engineering qualities continue to generate genuine scientific inquiry rather than settled consensus. The Great Pyramid was the tallest man-made structure on Earth for approximately 3,800 years. From its completion until the construction of the Lincoln Cathedral spire in England, approximately 1300 CE. The base of the pyramid is level to within approximately 2.1 centimeters across its entire 230-meter side length. The 4 base sides are oriented to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of approximately 0.05 degrees. The slope angle of the sides produces an apex height of approximately 138.8 meters in its current eroded state, approximately 146.5 meters at original construction. The total mass is approximately 5.9 million tons. The method of construction, specifically how 2.3 million limestone blocks averaging 2.5 tons each, with granite blocks in the King's Chamber weighing up to 80 tons, were moved from the quarry and placed at height, remains an active area of archaeological research. The internal ramp theory, the external zigzag ramp, the water lubrication theory, and other proposed mechanisms each explain some aspects of the construction and leave others unresolved. As Egyptologist Dr. Mark Lehner, who has conducted the most comprehensive modern excavation of the Giza Plateau, noted in published work, "We're not dealing with 10,000 slaves. We're dealing with a workforce of perhaps 20,000 skilled workers who were fed, housed, and cared for, an organized professional operation." Number 7. Stonehenge, England. Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, England, is so familiar that the specific engineering achievement it represents is frequently underappreciated. The blue stones, the smaller inner circle stones, approximately 2 to 5 tons each, were transported approximately 240 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales, across the Severn Estuary, and overland to Salisbury Plain. The mechanism of transport was almost certainly a combination of water transport by raft or boat and land transport on wooden sledges and rollers. The distance alone is a specific achievement in logistics. The larger sarsen stones, the outer circle's uprights, weighing up to 25 tons, and the trilithon lintels, weighing up to 40 tons, came from Marlborough Downs, approximately 25 miles to the north. The horizontal lintels are shaped with a slight curve on their top and bottom faces to follow the circle's geometry, and are secured to their uprights by mortise and tenon joints, the same joinery used in woodworking, applied to 40-ton blocks of stone. Stonehenge was constructed in multiple phases from approximately 3100 BCE to approximately 1500 BCE. The alignment of the monument's axis with the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset is documented as intentional and precise. The specific purpose, astronomical calendar, ritual site, burial ground, or some combination, is debated in the archaeological literature without settled consensus. The cremated remains of approximately 63 individuals have been found at Stonehenge, dating from the monument's earliest phases, which establishes it as a burial site, regardless of what else it was. Recent isotope analysis of the teeth and bones of individuals buried at Stonehenge has documented that some of the people interred there came from Western Wales, the same region the bluestones came from. Whether the bluestones were moved because of their connection to people who were already being buried at Stonehenge, or whether the people came because the stones were already there, is a question in current Stonehenge archaeology. The construction logistics for the bluestone transport deserve specific documentation. The Preseli Hills bluestones were quarried at Carn Godog and Rosafelin in Wales and transported approximately 200 miles by sea and land to Salisbury Plain. The rafts or boats that would have carried the stones across the Severn Estuary and along the coast have not been found. They were probably built from perishable materials. But the route is documented from geological sourcing of the stones and from experimental archaeology that has demonstrated the feasibility of the water transport route. The overland legs required wooden sledges and the work of hundreds of people. Number 6. Teotihuacan, Mexico. Teotihuacan, the pre-Columbian city located approximately 40 kilometers northeast of Mexico City, was at its peak between approximately 100 and 550 CE, one of the largest cities in the world, with a population estimated between 100,000 and 200,000 people, larger than contemporaneous Rome. The city's planning is what produces the future from the past response. The Avenue of the Dead, the main processional axis of Teotihuacan, runs for approximately 4 kilometers from north to south and is oriented 15.5 degrees east of north. This orientation is not a magnetic compass error. It is precisely aligned with the setting of the Pleiades star cluster on the horizon in the year 150 CE, and the 15.5-degree offset corresponds to the specific relationship between the Pleiades and the zenith sun at the latitude of Teotihuacan. This is the interpretation of archaeoastronomer Anthony Aveni, who has published extensively on Mesoamerican archaeoastronomy. The city's builders encoded astronomical geometry into the city's axial orientation. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, the third largest pyramid in the world by volume, rises 65 meters above the avenue on a base of approximately 220 by 230 meters. The Pyramid of the Moon at the northern end of the avenue is smaller but arguably more precisely positioned relative to the mountain backdrop behind it. Who built Teotihuacan is not established. The Aztecs who arrived later named the city and the street, but did not build them. Number 5. Lalibella's rock-cut churches, Ethiopia. The 11 rock-cut churches of Lalibela in the Lasta district of northern Ethiopia were hewn directly from the volcanic tuff bedrock, not built up stone by stone, but carved downward into the rock, so that each church is a monolithic structure surrounded by a courtyard trench entirely cut from the living stone. The churches were constructed approximately in the 12th and 13th centuries CE under the reign of King Lalibela of the Zagwe dynasty. The most famous of the 11, Bede Georgis, the Church of St. George, is a monolithic cruciform structure approximately 12 meters tall and 12 meters square, cut to a depth of approximately 12 meters below the surrounding rock surface. The exterior walls are decorated with a pattern of inset Greek crosses in 3 tiers. The interior is a functioning church that has been in continuous liturgical use since its construction. Ethiopian Orthodox Christian services are celebrated in it regularly. The whole structure is one piece of rock. The engineering required to carve 11 churches of this complexity downward into stone, maintaining structural integrity, planning the interior spaces before they are excavated, managing water drainage, has been studied by civil engineers who note that the sequencing of the excavation required sophisticated planning that is not obvious even to modern practitioners. Number 4. Machu Picchu, Peru. Machu Picchu, the 15th century Inca estate at approximately 2,430 meters above sea level on a ridge between 2 peaks in the Cusco region of Peru, is familiar from photographs but consistently underestimated in terms of its specific engineering achievement. Not the stonework, which is extraordinary, but the civil engineering of water management and drainage. The site receives approximately 1,900 millimeters of rain per year, much of it in intense monsoon season events. The Inca engineers built into the ridge a drainage system of approximately 130 drainage canals, 16 fountains, and a system of terracing that channels water away from the structures, prevents the saturated soil from causing landslides, and delivers clean water to the agricultural terraces and residential areas. The drainage system has been studied by civil engineers at the University of Arkansas, who found that its hydraulic calculations, the slope grades, the channel dimensions, the outlet positioning, are consistent with modern hydraulic engineering standards. It has functioned continuously for approximately 600 years. The site sits on 2 fault lines, which is documented as intentional in Inca construction practice. The bedrock is fractured, which drains water from the foundations, and the fractured rock can be quarried on site for construction material. The Inca selected the ridge specifically for its tectonic and hydrological properties. The water supply system for Machu Picchu is itself a specific engineering achievement. The site's primary water source is a spring located above the site on the hillside below Machu Picchu mountain. The Inca built a canal approximately 750 meters long from the spring to the main fountain at the top of the site, grading the canal at a consistent 3% slope to maintain flow velocity and prevent sediment accumulation. The 16 fountains that receive this water are arranged in a stepped cascade that flows from top to bottom through the site, with each fountain designed to produce a specific flow rate. The cascade hydraulics have been studied, and the Inca engineer's design has been documented as producing the intended flow at each fountain in the sequence. The terracing system, the agricultural and stabilization terraces that surround the main built area, extends the Machu Picchu site to approximately 36 hectares, of which about half is terrace agriculture. The terraces are not just agricultural. They are retaining walls that keep the mountain from sliding under the weight of the buildings. The fill within the terraces is documented by engineering analysis as containing a specifically designed drainage layer of crushed rock that manages groundwater below the built surface. The Inca engineers built an entire artificial substrate to support the city's foundations in a location where the natural ground would not have supported them. The site was built approximately in 1450 CE by Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, the 9th Sapa Inca, and occupied for approximately 80 years before the Spanish conquest disrupted the Inca state. Machu Picchu was never found by the Spanish and was not known to the outside world until Hiram Bingham III of Yale University was guided to it by a local farmer named Melchor Arteaga on July 24, 1911. Number 3. The Hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni, Malta. The Hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni on the island of Malta is an underground prehistoric structure carved from limestone bedrock approximately 5,000 years ago, making it contemporary with Stonehenge's earliest phase that served as both a sanctuary and a burial site. Approximately 7,000 individuals' remains have been recovered from the site. The Hypogeum occupies 3 levels, carved to a depth of approximately 10.6 meters, and contains a specific acoustic phenomenon that has been studied by archaeologists and acoustic engineers. The main chamber at the middle level, called the Oracle Room, resonates at approximately 110 Hz when a low male voice speaks within it. The 110 Hz frequency corresponds to the resonance of large stone chambers and is documented at other Neolithic sites, including Newgrange in Ireland. At 110 Hz, acoustic research has documented that the brain shifts from normal beta wave states toward a more meditative alpha wave state. Whether the Neolithic builders intentionally designed for this acoustic effect, or whether a chamber carved from limestone naturally resonated at this frequency and the builders recognized and enhanced it, is debated. Access to the Hypogeum is strictly limited to approximately 80 visitors per day to prevent humidity damage to the artwork, which includes spirals, geometric motifs, and ochre paintings in the upper level. Number 2. The Plain of Jars, Laos. The Plain of Jars, in the Xiengkuang Plateau of central Laos at approximately 1,000 to 1,200 meters above sea level, contains approximately 2,100 large stone jars, cylindrical vessels carved from stone, measuring between 1 and 3 meters in height and weighing between 600 kilograms and 8 tons, scattered across the plateau in groups of varying size. The jars were carved from sandstone, granite, limestone, and conglomerate, quarried from sources up to 8 kilometers away. They are dated to approximately 1500 BCE to 500 CE. The function of the jars is not established. The most widely accepted archaeological interpretation is that they were used as funeral urns or as containers for the preparation of the dead before secondary burial. Human remains, burial goods, and glass beads have been found in and around many jars. The specific quality that makes the Plain of Jars extraordinary is the scale and mystery. 2,100 stone jars ranging up to 8 tons, distributed across a highland plateau, whose manufacturing, transport, and purpose are only partially understood. The site was added to UNESCO's World Heritage List in 2019. Large portions of the plateau are still contaminated with unexploded ordnance from the Vietnam War era, when Laos was subjected to the most intensive bombing campaign in history. Approximately 2 million tons of bombs dropped between 1964 and 1973. Number 1. The Temples of Karnak, Egypt. Karnak in Luxor, Egypt, is not a temple, but a city-scale complex of temples, pylons, obelisks, sacred lakes, and processional avenues that was continuously expanded, renovated, and added to by virtually every significant pharaoh of the New Kingdom period from approximately 1550 to 1070 BCE, and by earlier and later rulers as well, producing a construction timeline of approximately 2,000 years. The specific element of Karnak that most clearly justifies its number 1 position on this list is the hypostyle hall of the Temple of Amun, the largest columned room in any religious building in the world. The hall contains 134 massive sandstone columns arranged in 16 rows, of which the central 12 columns are approximately 21 meters tall and 10 meters in circumference. The remaining 122 columns are approximately 15 meters tall. The hall covers approximately 5,000 square meters. At the height of its use, the columns, the walls, and the ceiling were painted in full polychrome color, the traces of which are still visible on protected surfaces. As architectural historian and Egyptian monument scholar Barry Kemp, who has excavated and studied Egyptian sites for decades, described the hypostyle hall. Standing in the hypostyle hall, even in its current unroofed and partially ruined state, is to understand something about monumental architecture that cannot be learned from photographs. The space is not large in the way a stadium is large. It is overwhelming in a specific way that has to do with the columns pressing in around you and the scale being human-shaped but multiplied into the incomprehensible. The construction method for the columns, likely built using mud brick construction ramps that were incrementally raised as the column drums were stacked, is documented and understood. What is less easily explained is the specific decision made by dozens of different pharaohs across 2,000 years to keep making Karnak larger, more elaborate, and more overwhelming. The result is the most complex ancient building site on Earth, and one that modern architectural engineers study as a demonstration of what can be accomplished with organized labor, mastery of material properties, and 2,000 years of institutional commitment. 13 structures, hunter-gatherer megalithic circles from 11,500 years ago, 125-ton polygonal blocks that survive earthquakes, precision-cut Bolivian stonework at 3,900 meters, basalt cities on coral reefs in the Pacific, the Great Pyramid level to within 2 centimeters across 230 meters, Stonehenge with 240-mile transported bluestones and mortise and tenon lintels, a Mexican city aligned to the Pleiades, 11 Ethiopian churches cut downward into living rock, Inca drainage canals that still work after 600 years, a Maltese underground chamber that resonates at 110 hertz, 2,100 stone jars on a Laotian plateau, and a column hall in Egypt built by 2,000 years of pharaohs. None of it was built by aliens. All of it was built by people who apparently had a lot more figured out than we give them credit for. Hit that like button and subscribe. More content like this coming.